And so that was, I think, for me, that was quite reassuring, because he wasn't an old fart, so he didn't have the headmaster kind of attitude of that I was scared of a producer having, coming in and saying, this is what you'll do, Sonny, and stand over there. And so I hit it off with him quite well straight away, because he was into guitars, and because I think ironically he was working with some bands at the time who, they weren't my cup of tea, but actually they were really interested in quite specific, quite overdriven guitar sounds, and like Spiritualized and stuff. And actually, the Spiritualized are an amazing band, but they were quite fussy people. And he, you know, after working with Jason Pierce, I think probably we were.
You were like relief then?
Maybe, yeah, I don't know, but you know, stuff like that. So basically, you know, the kind of the stuff that I was starting to do in rehearsal room, actually, was quite easy to sort of develop in the studio. So.
On that score, were there budgetary constraints on how long you could spend on it, given it was the first album and a brand new record label? Was anybody watching the clock and saying,
I don't.
Had enough guitar?
I'm not conscious of there being of us having that kind of pressure. I mean,
no,
I didn't think about things like that at the time. No idea.
No, we definitely didn't.
We were too young to think about things like that.
We used to think, yeah, we're going home now. I'll just take 4 cassettes of that. That's costing £10 each, and can I get 2 cabs just in case? You know, I might want to drop off a mate. You know, should we do that? But I remember wanting to quite early on wanting to use strings on anything really. It was just
that was your idea then.
Well, it wasn't my idea, but I remember when we were doing the Drowners. I remember being at Protocol and having a discussion about other songs and talking to him, and I was talking about using strings, and he mentioned talking about Sleeping Pills, doing strings on it then. And I was like, great. I was so desperate to be the kind of band that, you know, could do strings on a record and be a rock band live and then do something like that in the studio. So to be able to even talk about that when you're doing your first single was quite again, it was like quite a thing that, you know, attracted you to somebody. So.
And this is the 90s as well. There was actually money and music in those days.
Yes, we were still able to charge a reasonable price for it.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
It hadn't been devalued.
Their records did have budgets, so yeah, it wasn't really an issue.
So if I'm still on the recording, for a first album, were you worried about sounding too much like your influences? And who do you think they were anyway? Obviously, you used names in the ad that recruited Bernard, but
yeah, I don't think we were too worried about that.
By the time you recorded.
You know, I think every band making a debut album, that's always a sort of slight, you know, shadow hanging over it. But that's the beauty of the debut album, that there's a naivety and there's a sort of, you know, sort of joie de vivre, and you know, all of those. It's kind of a sum of its influences, but it's more than the sum of its influences as well.
I always thought a lot of people picked up on influences that I didn't, that I was just getting to know, but didn't really know very well. Like people, I remember talking to me about Marquee Moon and Tom Verlaine with the guitar playing and stuff, and I'd only just discovered Marquee Moon, or was just about to, but it wasn't on my radar at all. And I thought that was quite cool that people were talking about things, because actually I wasn't referencing them at all. And you know, the fact that I didn't sound like Johnny Marr was devastating. You know, when I remember just doing the first thing and thinking, hang on, that's not exactly how it should have been. And then then thinking, that's probably quite a good thing. You know, there's something good in this to sound like yourself. And but yeah, I don't know. I think everybody has things at the back of their head. I think the difference is that I know from working with other groups is that. I think it's important to have things at the back of your mind you're referencing, but I think to voice them is really dangerous, because I think if you're the kind of band that sits there discussing exactly how we get that revolver drum sound, then that's worrying, because you are just going to go down a tunnel. But I think Brett had different things in his head, and he probably didn't know what exactly was in my head on specific occasions.
Yeah.
And you worry. If I listen back to it, I remember at the time, I guess a lot of people were talking about David Bowie and T-Rex and stuff, and if I listen to that record now, it sounds like a record made in 1993. It doesn't sound anything like it. I mean, he doesn't sound anything like David Bowie, or any of those things, you know. So it just doesn't really matter now.
I think, you know, we were maybe trying to sound like some of those people, but like Bernard says, your natural musicianship kind of just comes through.
Yes,
And, you know, we were never one of these bands that were able to sound like it. You know, in a funny sort of way, there's something to be said for incompetence.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean by that? When you get bands that can too closely copy their influences, it's just, you know, I wasn't able to sing how I wanted to be able to sing, so I just had my own voice.
Yes.
And that's what makes a band interesting, when they can't quite do what they're trying to do.
Yes.
And also, I think it was more a point that nobody had. There wasn't a group around who had done the things that those other artists had done since then, pretty much. And I think it's more a case of it was the first time something like that had happened for a very long time. Somebody spoke in a very English accent and spoke about the things that Brett spoke about in the lyrics, and also the personalities. Or, you know, it was kind of theatrical, I think, having 4 people the way we were in a band. And I know that it's not, you know, it's happened plenty of times before, but at that time it wasn't really happening, you know. And I always thought it was just a bit of a strange thing that nobody was trying to do this simple thing. So as soon as we were trying to do it, we were doing it for a year before anybody would take us seriously, because it wasn't in vogue. And it was just like one day the page turned.
One day it just clicked. I think we just got good at it, didn't we? It was like, that was the thing, you know.
Yeah.
No one took any notice because we were trying to do something very much against the grain, and B, we hadn't quite perfected it yet, you know. And then all of a sudden, I think after Justine left, it sort of suddenly started gelling, didn't it? You know, that was the point. We started, me and Bernard started really writing. We were writing things like Pantomime Wars and Drowners and stuff, and then moving on to things like Sleeping Pills, and really, like I was saying, really enjoying being sort of like, you know, the craft of songwriting, getting into that.
But I think the biggest strength of that time was just that we both thought, why isn't everybody else doing this? You know, we were quite young and arrogant about it. I mean, I don't even know if that is arrogant, but just sort of, I genuinely couldn't believe other people weren't doing this kind of band, trying to make this kind of music, trying to have that kind of ambition in every way, musically, stylistically, you know, in every form, you know. And so it just seemed really obvious when it did happen. It felt like when people did start to listen, it felt sort of like, well, yeah, obviously. It was always going to work, you know. But it wasn't for a long time. It really wasn't. For a long time, we were very bullish about the fact that why isn't everyone else doing this? And hang on, why don't they like us doing it?
Yeah, we spent three very frustrating years playing to 2 people in pubs, you know.
But do you think that the fact that you suddenly became, you know, because there was nobody else doing it, does that contribute then to the hype that was generated?
Yeah, I think we were just very much against the grain, and you know,
it was something you latch onto.
Yeah, but there was a lot of factors. You know, because we were doing something very different and against the grain, and which initially people didn't pick up on. It was good that people didn't pick up on it too early, because if they had, we would have been under the microscope. But what happened was we were allowed just to develop our thing privately. A load of A&R men had come to see us really early on, passed on us, completely disinterested because we didn't sound like Slowdive. And that allowed us just to sort of like become Suede. And then by the time the media did pick up on us, we already had like pretty much the first album written and our little sort of sub-genre defined.
So in that respect, you weren't worried about living up to the hype. You already had the material.
No, we felt quite confident that you know that we had a lot of great songs and that we knew what we were doing, and that we were very much doing something that was our own. I think that was a really key thing. You know, we didn't feel part of. You know, you look back on things historically, it's always slightly distorted and wrong. You know, there was no thing called Britpop at the time. No. There wasn't a scene. You know, there was none of that. It was just Suede. We were on our own.
Yeah.
And that's an incredibly exciting thing for a band, to feel like you're really sort of like pushing the envelope and are kind of like at the vanguard of it all, you know.
And how do you see the album now in retrospect? Is there anything you would do differently?
I'd put My Insatiable 1 and 2 of the Birds on it rather than Moving and an Animal Lover, and make it a bit sort of beefier sounding, I suppose. Maybe lay off of the slightly irritating vocals in places. Things like So Young and stuff like that could have been sort of like sung a bit smoother, but you know, looking back on records, picking them apart, you know, part of their charm is their faults, you know. And it is, you know, it's not a perfect record. It has got faults, but then again, what is a perfect record?
Yes.
You know, it's a record with energy, and it's got charm, and I think, you know, it's a great record in its own right, I think.
And lastly, how did you come across the image that you used on the cover? Was that just you writing
On the tube.
I just used to look through like books and books and books of photography, and that's how we used to choose all those sleeves. I used to go up to Portobello Market and buy, you know, loads of old 70s photography books and just flick through them, and some images would resonate with me. All of those things like the Drowners and Metal Mickey and Animal Nitrate, they're just old photos, and that was the same process, finding that picture. Originally it's a picture of, the full picture is two women kissing in a wheelchair, and that was the original idea for the sleeve, and then we sort of looked at it and thought, actually maybe this is just a bit, you know, this could be taken the wrong way, and maybe we shouldn't go there, and we kind of ended up sort of cutting the image down.
But we'll fly away.